Oh, there we go.
Oh, wait, mine was not there.
Okay.
Yeah.
There it is, now it is.
Okay, we're good.
Pushed it like 5 times.
I don't know if it was you or
Can
Corey
you do
or...
something, Corey? Okay,
Are we
Okay.
live on video?
we're live on, yeah, we're streaming.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started, everyone. Sorry we're a couple minutes late. We had a little bit of some technical difficulties, but we are just 3 minutes late. I apologize for that. But let's go ahead and get started with a Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all stand and join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, I have asked Commissioner Wright, just blanked on you for a second there, Becky, I've only known you for a long time. I've asked Commissioner Wright to offer our prayer and or thought tonight, so we'll turn the time over to you.
Yes, thank you. As I thought about today, I remembered a conversation I heard just recently about housing needs in America and specifically in the Wasatch Front and how they've been, there's a lot of housing needs. And I asked Mackenzie to put this up on the screen, and you'd all probably understand and recognize Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you are not familiar with it, the basic premise is that everything starts at the bottom and you have a foundation, and then as those things are realized, you can move up this pyramid. And the very first thing that is needed is air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and reproduction. And I just think it's important for us to remember that shelter is a basic human necessity. It is something that everyone needs. Every person needs shelter in order to even receive safety, love, eventually make it to self-actualization and have us be in good, safe, contributing communities. Obviously, there's no easy fix for solving problems of housing shortage or rising housing costs or anything like that. But I do appreciate that as a city, we have been working on strategies to address moderate income housing as directed by the state. And I appreciate that the state has taken that under their purview to tackle, because usually we leave things up to the market demands. And then when these things don't always meet, then we have to have government get involved and legislate certain things. And so I think it's just important for us to remember that shelter is a basic human need. And as we move forward as planning commissioners and as community members, let's think about what we're doing to contribute to making sure that everyone has those basic needs met, and how these policies and things are being supported so that we can ensure that's happening. And I'll say a quick prayer. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity to meet together as commissioners. We pray for thy Spirit to be upon our city and our state, and help us to understand one another and seek to build a better communities in the different areas that we live. We are grateful for those that serve us in government and keep us safe, and we pray for them. We pray that we may always be mindful of how our actions affect others, and we ask for thy guidance in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Becky. It's good thoughts. Okay, we do have a good agenda tonight. We have 3 administrative decisions on the agenda tonight. Quick reminder for everyone: administrative decisions, unlike legislative decisions, we are considering whether or not the applications meet the requirements as outlined in the code, as opposed to setting policy. So just a quick reminder for everybody in attendance to make sure that we set the stage. We're going to start out with a conceptual site and conceptual subdivision plan for Canyon Point. This item has been scheduled for a public hearing. We'll get to that point in just a minute. So we'll turn the time over to staff.
Thank you, Chair Daley. Members of the commission, I'll be handling the Canyon Point project. Mackenzie's brought up on the screen for you what's in your packet. It's all online. This is an application submitted by Mr. Chad Morris. He is and his company have bought some property. It's located approximately what we say is 347 North, 400 East. That's the second home in off the corner of 400 North. But it does involve that piece of property with that small home on it, which we would consider underutilized at this point. And they've also purchased a couple of additional homes or lots along 400 North, and we'll assemble those properties together into one development. And the screen shows up there. They will construct a private road connecting the two different streets together. They propose duplexes for the most part. That is a housing style that's allowed in the residential medium zone. So I think they have 5 duplexes. They are preserving one of the single-family homes in this plan, so it'll be a total of 11 units on the property. We have a gross acreage calculation in Centerville City. We look at not the size of the net lot, but we look at the gross acreage of the property. That includes any streets that are associated fronting along the parcel and the properties. So they have a gross acreage of 1.88 acres in rounding. They will net out at 1.62 acres. The gross acreage is sufficient to allow the 11 units for the property. Now you'll be looking at the rest of the development in regards to the layout of the project. Mackenzie, I probably didn't prep you. Do we have a quick little vignette of the architectural plan?
Yes.
So this is just the schematic. This would be a singular unit or one side of the duplex. So you have the existing home that remains, and then the 5 duplexes will be constructed with this elevation style. It's a 1-story or 27-foot height, 2-car garage. It shows that they will have a 1-story with a basement. There's a schematic that shows stairs going down below. And this will be one side of the duplex. So if you just flip the reverse to the other side, you'll complete the duplex look. Thank you, Mackenzie. Just briefly go over the staff report. On your front page, on page 1, I give just a little aerial to try to orient you. It's 400 east to the right and 400 north to the top, or to the north side of the map. Just scrolling down to page 2, we usually cover the general plan. As you know, by our ordinances, we look at the general plan for the city. It does talk about, in this area, this is the Dual Creek Historic District, as well as the southeast neighborhood. Most of the neighborhood is single family, but we do have areas zoned for multifamily. It's a residential medium multifamily, allows 6 units an acre. This is one of those zones. It's residential medium. That's generally along the 400 North Street. Once you hit the south end of the property, you end up into the RL zone. The other thing is the Dual Creek District. The Dual Creek District is intended to preserve historic homes to the extent possible, or those homes that are contributing. The identity of the Dual Creek Historic was established by the Landmarks Commission. There are incentives in that Dual Creek Historic District that if you do something contextually sensitive to the district, so this is the idea that you utilize front porches, use gables, use a certain style of construction, you can qualify for those incentives. Those incentives are not large, but they do allow a person to seek some reduced fees on the building permits if they do so, and then some setback variations allowed if they choose to. At this point, the applicant hasn't sought those incentives, but by ordinance, staff is required to encourage those, or at least bring them up with every applicant. So that's what I'm highlighting is for the applicant to know that those are available to them if they want to seek those. The next page is the bottom of 2 and top of 3. This is the RM zone development standards and tables. We highlight that duplexes are allowed in this zone, as well as single-family uses. I go over the setbacks. It looks like they comply with the majority of what we call bulk area. This is the setbacks, the heights, the spacing of buildings. There's one measurement that's not listed on the plan. It's likely greater than the 20-foot requirement, but I just note that it's not listed on the plan. The blue highlight note in the staff report, we do in the RM district allow changes to setbacks based on the orientation of buildings. So example of existing is you look at the Granite Square that's just west of the project. They took advantage of that setback variation. Typically the setbacks are 25 feet to a front of a building. If you, in a multifamily development, put the sides of the building towards the street, that can be reduced to 20. They have not done that. The reason I highlight that is there might be some ability to shift the interior space a little bit. I don't think it's a large extent. But as we talk about common area and landscaping within the project, there's an opportunity to use 5 feet on 400 east as well as on 400 north to slightly open up that spacing. The next one is just below, I have the table for parking in multifamily. We require 2 spaces per unit. They have a 2-car garage associated with each unit, and so they will be able to meet the minimum parking standards. But additionally, in the multifamily zones, we anticipate visitors coming and going, and so we require by code a half a stall per unit. And it looks like we round upwards, not downwards by ordinance for parking. And so we're a little over 5 parking stalls that are needed. They depict 5, but we need to round up to 6. So they need 1 additional stall for parking. They plan parking along the private street. The street is 27 feet wide. That allows parking on one side of the street and still allow fire access through the private road. The largest thing I bring up in the discussion of the on-street parking in the garages, we just want to verify that they have room to be able to make a reverse out of the garages and not make it difficult to get out of the garage at the same time as there's on-street parking. As to landscaping, they provide a sufficient number of trees for the project. They're over the minimum amount, but we also require shrubs as a part of the landscaping design, and so I just mentioned that they have some shrubs shown on the plan, but they just need to verify the counts for the common landscaping. One thing that comes up regularly in a smaller multifamily development is the issue of refuse removal. So this is your garbage cans. The city does not provide garbage service down a private street. And so they need to provide their own trash service, and either through their own system of garbage cans or an on-site dumpster. On-site dumpsters become problematic in small areas, so it's difficult to get the truck in and dump the dumpster and get back out. But they just need to be aware of that the city will not provide garbage service internally on the private roads. We bring up signs. In the ordinance, we didn't see any location of signs. Signs are a separate permit issued by the zoning administrator, but on your final site plan, they're supposed to show the locations. Typically, the only signs that are going to be associated with this project are subdivision entrance signs, and that's just not shown on the plan. So if they want to have those, they need to show us by the time they come to final site plan. The utility plans, they've sent out the utility provider comments. We've got several of them back. But we also need several more. This is South Davis Sewer. That I have had a conversation with South Davis Sewer, but not received their comments back. Then we have Power for Rocky Mountain Power, Pacific Corp, South Davis Metro Fire. They'll be looking at hydrants and making sure the road is sufficiently wide for fire apparatus. And then we have the various cable companies who are required by state law to inform the utility providers. So we just need a few of those back to make sure everybody's been notified. I also provided you the city engineer's comments. He's looking at the engineering for stormwater, the streets, the radius of coming in and out of the project. He reports some of those things that he'd like to see on the construction drawings. At this point, we don't have construction drawings. They're only required to show the preliminary utilities, and most of our city engineer comments are down the road for their construction drawings. Fences and walls, they have existing fence located on their site. They plan on a new fence along the southern area. I just noted that it does not drop to the 4-foot requirement when you're hitting 400 East and mentioned that. The other issue that's come up to be, and I'll just disclose it to you, the take I have, you decide as a commission. I know Lisa and I had a conversation about it. Typically in the RM zone, we've had minimum building design requirements. Those were adopted a few years back. This last legislative session, the state of Utah took that right away from municipalities. Basically, they're indicating that any single-family development or duplex development, they originally had townhomes in there, but that was taken out of the final bill. But they originally, or they do have now a requirement that was effective this year that cities can no longer regulate the building elements for single-family and duplexes. So we are not addressing that in our code, even though we've adopted it. We'll have to amend those and apply them to townhomes or projects larger. But I just mentioned it. But it is in the Dual Creek Historic District. Those guidelines are voluntary. And the Dual Creek District guidelines are, I wouldn't say significantly, but they're intended differently than our other design elements. It's intended to have a historic character when you use those, and they're a voluntary program. And so I've taken the position that although that's in a historic district, the design elements that are voluntary are different than the design elements of the code. So I don't anticipate that we would apply that section of the code. On the conceptual subdivision plan, this is submitted along with the project because typically in multifamily, you're either choosing to rent or you're choosing to sell the units. In this case, they're choosing to sell the units, and in order to sell individual sides of the duplex, they will have what we call a planned unit development plat. This is similar to a condominium plat. This is where the unit for sale will be sold, but the rest of the area, the street, the landscaping and so forth is held in common. And so you have an HOA to be established as part of the subdivision. What our code says is that you, on a conceptual subdivision, it's really a reflection of what your multifamily layout's going to be. And so we're just tagging that along with this approval, knowing that down the road with preliminary and final subdivision plats, we'll be preparing the conditions, covenants, and restrictions, the formulation of an HOA as a part of it, and then the platting of the individual units with the common space. And so I just bring that up, knowing that they need both applications, but they're in essence tied together. The layout of the site plan drives the layout of the subdivision. So I think we're at conceptual, so we're not here at a final design. Our purpose here tonight is to look at the ordinance. What are they short of? What do they need to address? Is it significantly problematic to comply with the code? The final, I don't think so from my position, so I just outlined some conditions and directives basically to say if you're going to move to your next step, they would have 1 year to apply. These are the things that we just need you to do. A lot of them are just prep conditions. for final site plan and preliminary subdivision plat. I do provide you two motions, though, because it is two different applications. There's one motion for the site plan, and then there's another motion for the subdivision. So I provide recommendations and findings for you. With that, questions, or leave it up to you to talk to the applicant and then debate?
Yeah, Corey, quick question for you. The standards, the voluntary standards of the historic district, remind me who is the judge of that, I guess? Is that staff? Is that the Landmarks Commission? Who gets to decide that these standards meet the criteria or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. The voluntary standards were established by the Landmarks Commission, and they are administratively given to the zoning administrator to make sure. What they've done is they have 10 different elements that you can choose from, and you have to pick 4. And so what the zoning administrator is just looking, they submit an application, they identify which 4 that they're choosing, and the zoning administrator just verifies that the 4 that they've chosen are reflected on the plan. So these are like a front porch would be an element, a gable end would be an element, things of that nature.
Thanks, Corey. Does anybody else have any questions for?
I do. I was looking at the setbacks of the, I guess it's the subdivision plan, or the conceptual site plan. And I'm just interested, can you explain proposed duplex 3, 4, and 5 are all on one lot? Is that correct?
They will all be on one lot when they're finalized.
Okay, so, and then you're so then you're saying that the 22.7, which is on the west side of duplex 3, would be considered the rear setback? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I'm applying the setbacks from both streets, because the way setbacks work is the rear yard is perpendicular to the front yard, and then you have the side lots. And so what I've interpreted is 400 east is a front yard setback, and then the property line to the far west end would be a rear yard setback. And then the north and south properties would be the side setbacks. And then we look at 400 north. 400 north would be the front yard setback. And then that L, you'll see the part of that property jogs. So you have the south end of that area now is the rear yard setback, with the 2 north, or the east and west would be the side lots.
Okay, so with kind of that in mind, I looked up your little asterisk so I could understand that better for 12.55.130L. And it talks about if the long portion of a main building faces a rear or side property line, the setback shall be 20 feet. And I'm just interested because it looks like the way the duplexes are, the long portion.
Are to the sides.
So that, I'm a little bit confused on how we
They're
can do that.
voluntary. They're voluntary standards. They may be applied. The developer has an option to choose that. So right now, they're complying with the standard. And if they wanted to try to flip it around to alongside, it's a voluntary standard in the supplementary section. It says may do this.
So Corey, all of this is based on the fact that we're basing this off of 4th East and 4th North, because those are the public streets. The private road through the middle doesn't matter.
Correct.
Because it's a private road.
Correct.
Okay.
So that the alternative setbacks are a may, and then once they choose the may, then the shalls come into play. And it would probably be just some difficulty in the layout to do building orientation setbacks.
So the may occurs before the 12.55.130.
It's, yeah, you look at that section and it says they may request that. And then if they do a building orientation, then it's, okay, if you're choosing the building orientation, these are how the shalls will work.
I'm still confused because I don't see any mays in this, because it says shall be allowed, and then the setback shall be 20. And then the other thing, L2 says, if the building is adjacent to an RL zone, the minimum setback shall increase an additional 5 feet per story, which is just a 1-story. It says it won't be smaller than 10 feet, but then it says up to a maximum of 20 feet.
Getting to it here.
Are you able to pull that up, Mackenzie?
Residential zones, and now, so when you go to the table, this is just the residential zone itself. This is not the alternative setbacks. And so you go to the asterisk, and there's a note under the asterisk. Let me get to my table. Okay, so note 3, so this is the residential medium standard, so it's a table of 1232, helping Mackenzie get to that point. And you're down to the table section. And below the table section, under the asterisk, you have note number 3. And note number 3 says, flexibility for setbacks may be provided for multifamily dwellings. Will be subject to 1255. And the idea of what happened this was created out of the Granite Square, is because they were tight on the property and they wanted to orient them differently than oriented to the street. And so they put the rear yards to the side of the lot to get the reduction to the front. And so flexibility for setbacks may be provided, but it's not mandatory. They can choose to implement note 3. And then note 3 takes you to the other table and says, if you use a building orientation, this is the expectations of that. Otherwise, we're back to the default. 25 from the road.
Okay.
Corey or Lisa, I'm just curious. I meant to look this up before I came and I didn't get a chance to. I was surprised to see in the staff report this new law that went into effect. This was not one that was on my radar. Do you guys have any insight into what was driving the Utah legislature for taking away the ability of municipalities to regulate design elements? I'm always curious when the state is taking away local power, so.
I can give you the background, but half of it's going to be editorializing, so I got to be careful about the editorializing part. This probably started, I would say we're probably, for municipalities, this probably started maybe 15, probably even longer than that, years ago. When you had the promotion of manufactured housing occurring, a lot of people became uncomfortable that they would build a house in a traditional manner on a lot. Somebody could buy a lot next to it and place a manufactured home. Manufactured homes are federally controlled construction, and then they're brought in on axles and wheels, and then they're placed on a foundation, secured to the foundation, and then become real property. And if you look at the design of the manufactured homes, a lot of cities were uncomfortable with the materials that are allowed under the federal manufactured home guideline. And so cities started saying, okay, we can't tell you you can't have a manufactured home because federal law allows you. This is back to, now this is an editorial. This is back to Becky's issue of the thought of, allow housing and shelter. And the federal program came in and said, yeah, the International Building Code and these things will not apply to manufactured homes. And a lot of people confuse manufactured homes with trailer homes, because they do come in on an axle, but the axle has to be removed when you fix it to a foundation. So cities became uncomfortable with that and started passing design elements. Okay, you can have a manufactured home because federal law allows you, but we want it to be 25% brick on the exterior. So they'd have to bring in the manufactured home, and then they'd have to alter the design and put on brick and some other elements. As time went along, cities started doing that. So, developers will do that. They will build a subdivision and they won't sell lots to other people if they're not building it themselves unless they meet certain designs, because they don't want to sell a house to one lot and then somebody come in and build something completely, for lack of better terms, looks like a hamburger. I heard that in a public hearing once. A hamburger on the next lot looking place. And so developers will say, hey, if you buy this lot, this is your minimum, this is how big of a house you'll build, and this is what you'll use at minimums. So they have their own private covenants. Well, cities started growing into that. City started defining that. And we've defined it in a post thing of manufactured homes. We've designed it of just trying to establish quality to single-family neighborhoods. And particularly if you're thinking about multifamily. Instead of just T111 siding, which is really the manufactured home style siding, you know, you could put in some hardy board. That's a trademark name, but a hardy board. And so cities started adopting these, and it's evolved over time to be more than just manufactured homes. And if you know the state legislature, they're not skim on, what do you call it? They're not few and far between. They have a predominance of home builders and realtors on the board. And they don't like cities encroaching that far into the design of home builders. And so the reaction was they wanted to make it to single-family homes, duplexes, and townhomes, but didn't apply it to, quote, apartments. It's okay to do it to apartments, but not to townhomes. The governor vetoed that bill, but not for that purpose. He vetoed it because there were some conflicts with FEMA. And they came back in the special session, renegotiated that section of the bill, and townhomes got removed. I don't know the explanation of townhomes getting removed, but townhomes got removed from the draft, and now it applies to single-family duplexes. And that's the long story that didn't go so short.
I was wondering if it was being motivated primarily by the construction industry. You gave me hope for a small second that maybe it was altruistically trying to keep costs of building down, but
I think that's some people's excuses for it, but you're spending $250,000 on a lot in Centerville. I don't think T111 siding is the issue.
that was my editorial comment. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So Corey, how often do we have, so just kind of back to these setbacks, how often do you count the setback from, like, how often have we had front doors that are going to be technically on the side yard or whatever?
We do not choose by ordinance. So if you just took a single-family home and had an corner lot, not interior yard, corner lot, you have a 25-foot front yard setback, a 20-foot side yard setback. It's not orientation to door. You don't have a door orientation for front yard. Just one street will be 25, the other street will be 20. You orient your door accordingly. We don't have a door orientation selection in our ordinance.
I have a question, and I don't know if this is even right, but those two properties that are still there with the road right behind them, do they have an obligation to keep that, do they have a fence there, or do they?
This is the two lots down from the corner on the north side. Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, the northeast side, the Harvey Clark and Connie Matson.
Right. This has been the debate, whether we wanted to extend buffers to single-family or to multifamily, residential medium, RL. As you know, the city chooses a buffer between commercial and residential, and we now choose a buffer between residential high and another zone. But we do not have a buffer between a medium residential and a residential low. So
there's
it's a
no
voluntary
obligation.
fence at that point.
Well, in this case, those are all medium, in this particular.
Yeah, in this particular case, yeah. But on the south side, you would
Yeah.
not have them. You're right. So it would be up to the property owners either to work together or put up their own fence if they want to screen themselves from that. We don't have a screening requirement in this case.
Okay. Anybody else, any questions for staff?
My question is, on this Legowski property, is that considered part of this property, this project or not?
No, that's a back area. So you got the L-shaped that's happening. So you got a north-south boundary, east-west boundary, and that's a part of,
So they're not going to be landlocked in there?
they have, the Slagowskis own the property, I think, on one of the lots on the Florence subdivision.
295 east. 300 north.
Huh?
On 300 North, this Legowski's on 295 East, 300 North.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure there wasn't gonna be an issue with that.
Yeah, I think the confusion is on this
Yeah, it shows it as a big
picture. Yeah,
rectangle.
it's got a big rectangle, but it's not a rectangle.
Right.
Right.
I disclosed it with approximate
Okay.
because the editing points started blowing up the graphic.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. All right, at this point, we will invite the applicant to step forward, introduce himself, and give us a rundown, any thoughts, comments, right there, front and center.
Awesome. Chad Morris, the applicant. Yeah, we just pretty much, as you know, this isn't my first time here, but after the last time, we kind of thought, you know what, we want it to look better and have a better flow with the whole project. So that's when we started trying to work with neighbors. Actually, those who we've sold to or who we've purchased the properties from on 400 North, they've been very helpful. They've actually told us themselves, yes, something needs to be done to that area. And so we feel like we have a very good plan to help revitalize the neighborhood, that area, because you do have the Granite Square, which is helping quite a bit. But this, I feel like, will even be a better blend to go from that to this, because it's not the five. I think they have 5 units on each side, or 6. I can't remember which one. But this will even kind of turn it into more of a duplex type flow into, I guess, the corner lots of duplex, but single house and then more neighborhood. So it's a good tie-in. The whole development we feel works well. But yeah, questions?
Go ahead.
I have 2 questions
Yeah.
for you, Mr. Morris. The first is, do you have a plan to add the additional visitor parking stall, given that that's a requirement? I didn't see a ton of wiggle room there, but I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable with being able to satisfy that. And the
Yes.
second question is to address staff's requirement with regard to garbage removal. I was
Yeah.
wondering if you thought through that plan.
We spoke about that in the city staff meeting, about the garbage, and yes, we were planning on that anyway. I guess I didn't realize it needed to be on the plan itself, so a note stating that that's separate or aside from the city pickup, so. But yeah, we're planning on that. And then, what was
The
your?
visitor stall, the extra visitor stall.
Yes, we're planning on that,
Okay.
so.
Any thought or consideration to participating in the voluntary design standards for the historic district?
Honestly, in fact, the last time we came, I can't remember who was sitting with Mackenzie's spot. She kind of ran it last time.
Cassie.
Cassie, that's right. So, and we were hoping to do it last time. I haven't even thought about it really. So honestly, I think we could try to do it. I'll have to look at them. Like, I think we have the porch and the gables already. I think I don't know if is there anything in there with lighting on the paths or, oh, come on, what? What about just having people there? They're historic? No.
Yeah.
But,
People are historic, that's right.
yeah, so I'm open to that if we can make it work. Obviously, it's anything to save some money, so, and make the neighborhood look good, so, yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay? Thank you.
All right, so this matter has been scheduled for a public hearing. We will go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. A couple of reminders. Please introduce yourself, your name, your residence, and any questions. We will address those at the very end of the public hearing. I'll be writing those down so that we can address those then. So if anybody would like to speak to this matter, please step forward to the microphone and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Paul Gregerson, and I'm a resident of Granite Square. And I just had a question about the diagram showed that they were two-car garage. Are those going to have driveways that are facing the private drive? Yes.
We'll get that at the end. So just in case there's a whole bunch of questions.
We'll
we're
write them
gonna-
all down and
Well,
then,
I'm writing them down and we'll catch those at the end. Any other questions you have or any other comments?
Regarding the refuse, we have a private drive, and we just put our stuff on Fourth North. So we wheel it out, and then they pick it up. That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Wendy Bangerter, resident of Granite Square, and my husband and I live directly on the other side of the existing vinyl fence on the west side of that development. And we noticed that there's retention planned for the water, storm water coming down that street. And our concern is hopefully that retention is walled with concrete or something so that it does not compromise our rock walls on the other side of that vinyl fence. And that was our biggest concern.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Larry Grandy. I'm also in Granite Square. I'm on the other side of the street. A question, it's single level, it's got a basement, but a single level now. Is there any possibility that can change without going through the full process again? I think that's probably the major concern of most of us in Granite Square is the height and the fact that a second floor can look right down onto the backyards of everyone on that side.
My name is William Nelson. My major concern is the drainage of the water from the property above us. We are 20 feet at least below the property above us. And where will the water go? And if the engineering fails, who will be responsible? That's the question we have.
My name is Kent Bangeter, and a resident of the Granite Square, and one of those properties, my wife was up here just a moment ago, so ours is directly adjacent to where all of this is going on. Bill Nelson mentioned about the height difference between our property and the property going in. And that leaves questions about the loss of privacy into our backyards. We have serious concerns about two-story buildings for that reason, and don't know exactly where the height will be of the single story, and will that in fact allow people to view directly right into our backyards, which currently are very private. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm John Andrew. I'm one of the residents in the Granite Square property. We're on the south end of the property, but on the west side. I have a question about the electrical coming into these facilities. Is it designed to come with overhead wiring, power lines, or is it going to be underground supply for the power source? And what's your provision for fire protection hydrants? I see one hydrant listed across the street on Parish Lane. Do you have some locations in your plan for some fire protection. And I think that's the only questions I have at this time. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
One more question relating to city codes as far as this type of a development and the ability to sell. It's generally designed, as we understand it, as ours was, for individuals, individual families to move into. But sometimes we see in some of these developments out there where they have, we've had people come in, buy them, and then turn around and start renting them. Is this property, does the zoning allow for the rental of these units after they have been sold? What's the status there?
Great. All right, I'm looking at everybody. Everybody's either been up once or twice, or has been whispering to somebody next to them. So I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And excellent questions that were raised, lots of excellent questions. So let's start off, Corey, you want to address some of these? We want to have the applicant address some of these, but Corey, which ones do you want to hit? Did you write them down too?
I'd be happy to address them, but I'll be honest with you, I'd rather have the developer address them just because.
Well, I was going to say, okay, how about this then?
I'm willing to address some level and then the developer.
Let me throw a couple of them at you, Corey, for code and what the city requires then. As far as fire suppression and hydrants, do we require hydrants along the private street?
That's a depend question. That's part of the reason of looking at the fire and working with the engineer. We require hydrants a spacing of 400-foot radiuses, and as long as those radiuses overlap on the public road, there would be no need to establish a hydrant in there unless the fire department could not provide services interior to development. And so the city engineer will look at the hydrant spacing and ensure that the hydrant spacing radiuses on the public roads cover this development. And so that's part of his review. The fire marshal then will look at that. Their spacing is actually 600, so we're better off with our ordinance at 400. Then they'll look at apparatus access to the road. That's what they'll look at to make sure it's a one-side street parking plan. And then they'll just look at the radiuses and the turns of the apparatus, where they plan to fight the fire from. They first will look at staging at the public street first. They don't like to take the apparatus into the private property. If they have to take the apparatus in a private property, the fire marshal has some stipulations that they'll look at. And if additional hydrant is needed, they would do that. I suspect we're in an area that probably has sufficient hydrant service, but I don't want to say there wouldn't be an additional hydrant in the public realm if the fire marshal needed it. So that's part of the review, and we'll see that in the construction drawings in the final site plan process.
Well, and the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like they have a proposed hydrant right between 3 and 4, duplex 3 and 4, and also that the streets, each side of the street is 11 widths at what looks like the most narrow, which generally speaking, isn't that wide enough for
Apparatus will need 20 feet, so you have a 27-foot road with, and they will allow parking.
So they have 22 feet.
They should have 27 with the curb gutter and.
Well, sorry,
asphalt.
not with the curb, I just mean in the inside of the road. So it looks, I mean, he can let us know, but it looks like they've planned for that.
Yeah, so they'll look at that. And I didn't get any feedback from the fire or the engineer, so I'm just defaulting to them on the issue.
Corey, let's go to a post-development height change, if somebody wants to add a second story to that, how does the city handle that type of a change?
Well, the first to start out the base zone is the 35-foot. So the applicant is choosing to go less than the 35-foot requirement and planning this development with a one-story and a duplex style, so it's 27 feet. With this application, if it moves forward with this application, then the Planning Commission will be reviewing the final site plan to make sure that it complies with what you saw at Conceptual. So it's not going to change in this, if it stays in this process, it won't change until you give a final approval, then they will construct it as per that final approval. Is that a guarantee? The answer is no, it's not a guarantee. The developer could withdraw the application today and go back and say, no, I'd rather do this and do a 35-foot height requirement. And then we would re-review that 35-foot height requirement. The other scenario, just to be disclosure, is the project builds the 27-foot high buildings, and down the road, the HOA is looking at, hey, we'd like to take advantage of, city hasn't changed its 35-foot height requirement. We'd like to take advantage of that and add some spaces to our units. They could come back and amend their development, and then we would re-review it under the 35-foot high requirement and see.
It's a new site plan.
It would be a site plan amendment.
Yeah.
Given the design style, as long as the applicant is heading this direction, to do is, with an HOA, the size of the duplexes, what it takes for the group to get together, if this is approved at 27 feet, it'd be a long shot that we'd see an amendment come back in.
So even if, let's just say duplex number 1 wanted to add the 8 feet, take advantage of that 8 feet, they'd have to get the whole HOA to agree to it to come in and amend the site plan.
Well, likely they're going to have controls of the HOA that control that. Most HOAs have some exterior requirements and say, no, you can't make changes to it unless the HOA approves it.
Yeah.
So I anticipate that that's going to be part of their controls. But even if, let's just say the HOA just says, yeah, we're good with it, they still have to come to the city to amend their approval for it. So the answer is, as we see it and moving forward, unless the developer has an imagination outside of today and he's changed his mind tomorrow, you're likely going to see the 27-foot.
I mean, when we're talking about, we keep talking about the HOA, and that's going to be governed by the CC&Rs, right? The developer has total control over those initial CC&Rs, correct?
Right.
Okay, so we'll get to that in just a second.
Corey, can I ask a clarifying question? With regards to this issue of height, there is nothing that makes this subdivision different than any single-family home in the city. Meaning if my single-style Rambler neighbor next to me wanted to tear down their house and build a 2-story, 35-foot home that overlooked into my backyard, I might not like it, but there would be nothing I could do about it, right? There is nothing that's different.
Yeah,
here.
today, there's nothing different. I mean, this is the perpetual argument of even within the Dual Creek District that's located. I mean, a substantial portion of the Dual Creek District is the single-story homes. And I've seen inside the Dual Creek District, somebody buy 2 homes, demo the 2 homes, and build a significant structure inside the Dual Creek District. The city has not chosen to have a specific area to reduce the 35-foot height. So any residential development in the city, no matter where you're at, you have the ability to go to 35 feet if you want to make an addition to your single-level home. It's tough, it's expensive, it's difficult, but people can do it. Or they can tear down and buy lots if they have enough money and build something larger. We call that bash and build by nickname. Right now, the city just says our residential area is 35 feet, no matter where you're at. So anybody next to it could tear down their home and build 35 feet too, or make an addition to their home 35 feet too. Should we change that? Sure, in the future, if the legislative body wanted to say, hey, this particular area can only be 1 story, we could do that. But now we have to have a fundamental change to a geographic area and justify that reason why. And I'd imagine it would be quite a debate to limit it to 1 story.
Corey, what does the city, is there any requirements or expectations about how the power lines are coming in? Do they have to be underground? Will they be overhead? Does it just depend on what's there currently, or?
Yeah, the current city ordinance is that utility lines are now underground, so they will all be serviced by underground. They may come off a pole on the street for its initial phase power to come to it, because we have poles along Main Street, and we have poles serving interior lots. But once it drops to a development here, it'll all be placed underground.
Okay. Let's see here, just trying to think, a lot of these questions are going to be best answered by the applicant, so we'll invite him in just a second to do that.
There's one that I probably should answer, don't want to, because I'm somewhat the bearer of bad news on this. This is the issue of loss of privacy, and also it's coupled with the buy versus rent control. Loss of privacy, although it is understood that people look at their backyards as a place of quite a bit of privacy, there are no standards in the city, if you're within the height requirement, to mitigate any loss of privacy to a backyard. An example is you go up the hillside and you always have homes that are further up. So you cut in a street on Main Street, build a home onto it, you go up to Ford Canyon, and the next street's up higher. And we do receive complaints that the house higher on the hill blocks the view of the mountains. We also have the reverse complaint out here in the flats, if you call it. Somebody builds a house on the east side, and it's a two-story, and they have a one-story, or they have a one-story on the east side, they build a house on the west side that's two-story, they have a loss of the sunset. Those are losses of subjective value at this point in time, so I don't want to say that they don't happen, but we don't have any visual mitigation standards in our ordinance for that. So that's a little bit of bad news. And the other little bit of bad news is buy versus rent control. We don't have ability to determine whether somebody can buy a home and live in it versus buy that home and rent it. And that goes for all your residential. Under the Fair Housing Act, somebody can buy any unit and rent it out, whether it's a home or whether it's a block of buildings.
Unless the CCNRs for the HOA decide otherwise.
Usually they won't, because you run afoul, it's the subleasing. So an example is you buy a townhome unit, this is a simple term to it. They will say that the owner that buys it may not be able to sublease it. But it's usually not it's not an HOA thing. It's usually the issue that you can buy the unit, you can rent it, but the renter can't sublease it. That's where the control usually lands. It doesn't land at the first renter or first owner. It's that subleasing underneath a renter. Usually your HOAs are not going to let you sublease the renter. Renting can't further sublease the unit. That's where you usually see the control. So it doesn't you can rent, you just can't be a renter and sublease most of the time.
Okay, Corey, one more question, actually, and then we'll have the applicant. So as far as stormwater retention, if that for some reason were to fail and maybe to flood over into the Granite Square property, who's the responsible party for that?
Again, a very difficult question. Well, first of all, to step back, the city engineer is going to review that. They'll look at it. I'll bring up the issue that's brought up with the rock wall. I mean, those are all concerns about where the water's drainage. Under state law, with this size, we no longer can detain, they have to retain. So the idea is that it would slowly percolate into the soil. There is an allowance not to retain if it creates a further hazard, and so that's something that the city engineer is going to be looking at, is the detention versus retention. If it stays retention, there's going to be an event. They usually do it on a 25-year event where it bubble up. They have a bubbler in the far corner that'll hit the street and take it out down the stormwater system if it's overloaded due to a rare event. Now to step back. So they're going to look at it the best they can from engineering. But the difficult part is we do this with hillsides all the time. When you have a hillside development, you can take Bountiful's example. A pool with water was, claimed, and irrigation was claimed to create the landslide there. The other one was a wet year, and it was slowly seeping. The city under state laws to take reasonable measures to protect the public, but we cannot take measures on with the public liability that we will guarantee no harm to you. It's just not financially feasible. And so we take reasonable measures, we look at the standards of engineering, we rely on the professionals of soil and engineering, we take it into account, we approve a development. If something in the what-if scenario takes place, we're all going to be pointing fingers at each other, because we can only go so far with reasonable engineering, and then if a disaster does happen. So I would say the reasonable engineering covers most circumstances, but I wouldn't want the impression that I've promised a guarantee.
Absolutely.
Lisa doesn't want you to give that impression either.
Well, yeah, and I guess my comment is if this is a private system and the HOA is responsible for maintaining it, if it's appropriately engineered, the HOA is going to be the one that would be liable and responsible for any failure. But it will be, and the city's role is in reviewing the engineering and making sure that it's properly engineered from the beginning. But a lot of systems fail because they're not maintained, so, and that will be the HOA's responsibility.
And then that would just be a civil matter between those parties. Got it. Thank you, Lisa. Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Corey, or should we invite the applicant up? All right. So we have some questions for you.
It's good to be back.
Yeah. Could you talk about the orientation of the garages and the two-car garages? I think.
Yes, he was asking if they go out to the private drive, is that right?
Yes.
They do go out to the private drive. All the homes face into the street, the private drive street.
So nobody will be backing out onto 4th East or onto.
Correct.
4th
Yeah.
North.
Yeah, that's just an entrance for all vehicles.
Okay. Talk a little bit more, if you would, please, about the garbage collection and maybe what do you anticipate for where that's going to take place?
Yeah, I haven't thought about exact details on it yet, so you're kind of catching me off guard there. But my thought is, because it's a wider road that can allow fire trucks in and whatnot, that we could just put them on one side of the street, probably the south side of the street, or outside, south and east side, and that a truck could swing just right through there. I haven't talked details with garbage companies, so I don't know that very well, but that would be my initial thought and plan.
Okay.
Maybe Corey knows, hey, that's not going to work. I don't know, but so.
No, my issue is we won't enter the street. As you indicated, as the public indicated, some of them put their trash receptacles, sign up with a count with the street and put them out onto the public street. That's a decision of the Public Works Department to decide if they're going to allow accounts like that. That's why I bring it up, because typically we see multifamily with dumpsters and we have dumpster regulations. But that's not to say that he can't hire a private refuse company with garbage cans and drive their truck down the street. Just be aware that if you drive a truck down the street for private dumpster, we have a noise ordinance, so your private contractor has to stay within those hours.
Right.
So it's up to the applicant to how they want to handle refuse.
Okay.
Okay. Honestly, I think we've covered most of these with Corey. A lot of these are, we've talked a lot about the HOA and CC&Rs, and that's up to you to decide on how to handle that stuff as well. Anybody else have any other questions for the applicant?
Just
Go ahead.
were there any other public comments that Corey didn't hit that you wanted to respond to?
Or anything you want to add to Corey's?
Yeah, I'll add one thing to Corey's comments in terms of, I always worry about, well, I don't. I understand the worry about renters, and I'm not just saying this for this property here. I'm just saying in general that I'm very big on individual property owners' rights. And I mean, if any of them wanted to rent their home or needed to, I think that's an important thing that we kind of all need to remember, that that's an actual right we have to rent that out. That cities really, I mean, they can regulate whether we rent out to 2 families, if I understand correctly, or, you know, put 3 families, whatever in there, but to rent it out just to 1 family, it's important. It gives people the ability to have homes and investments, you know, for their retirement, and so I'm all about that. That's all I wanted to add on that one.
Right.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, I know that when you first came to see us, we talked a little bit about meeting some of the needs of residents in the city with master on the main floor. And I just appreciate that you've looked at what the market would need, but also the needs of our specific community to create a product that has a master on the main floor, whether it was, you know, single story or second story or whatever, that allows a lot of flexibility for different types of families and different types of people who would need a home. So
Thank you. And that's what we've thought that through. And I'm a realtor, so I see the needs in Centerville often, that we need some of these family homes for families who want to move back, who have parents here. And so I'm hoping this allows empty nesters, people who are done with the big yards, that opportunity to come move here, and then possibly their kids, who knows who moves into their old homes, but it opens up just more housing, like you were saying at the start. So thank you.
Jared Daly, can I ask the applicant a question?
Go ahead.
We can't force it. Well, I get on the spot, so it's
I know,
time to
right?
put you on the spot a little bit. The comments was about the change of height and anything, and I
Yeah.
mentioned that it's a choice level for you. I'm just asking for the public here, what's your commitment level for that?
I am very committed at this point with 27 feet. We initially kind of thought, okay, could we put some sort of loft in there for just an extra, maybe even extra storage or extra office up top that, but ultimately we kind of decided, no, we want to gear this towards fewer stairs, to your point, and we have the basements to help with storage. So yes, I don't see a need for extra height at this point. That's not our target. What we're hoping to get moved in, and so.
is the 1605 square feet total or just for that main floor?
That's for the main floor for those, and the other, well, so there's 2 different widths.
Okay.
The 4 that face each other, those 2 duplexes, that's for those 4. The other 2 are I think, an extra 10 feet wider.
Okay.
So those ones will have an opportunity to have 3 bedrooms on those. But they will still, I've talked with our designer, still be 27 feet high.
Okay.
So,
But that gives, I mean, even without a second floor, that gives a decent sized home
oh yeah.
for many different types of families.
Exactly. It has the plan is to have a big open family room, because I know what people who are empty nesters, they still want family to gather there, and so it's going to have that opportunity, give them that opportunity to gather, to have an office, to have a large master, a nice, yeah, I mean, these are all things you don't care about, but yes, that's our hope, is that it's still very spacious for somebody, and they don't, yeah, and it's not, it invites people to the project, if that makes sense.
Jared Bailey, I feel small now. My patio home is 1,497 square feet.
Well,
There's going to be something here, Corey.
Yeah, Corey,
On the
you're invited,
Sunbelt.
right?
I just bought mine. I'm not ready to move again.
I have a feeling that some of those in Granite Square are gonna want to move over. Oh, I don't know.
okay, anybody else have any questions, any more questions for the applicant? Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion among the commission about what we've heard, what we've talked about?
I will just say, I don't remember which of you were here the last time that Mr. Morris brought a proposal for this piece of property here. I like this one so much better. I think that this fits the community very well, and I think that it's gonna add some needed housing to our community, so I'm excited to see it.
Here, here.
For the record, I voted in favor of the last proposal, but, because I felt like it complied with our zoning requirements, but I like this one much better.
Well, then let's, we've got two motions. Let's split them. We'll do them one at a time. I'll entertain a motion.
I hereby make a motion for the Planning Commission to accept the conceptual site plan for Canyon Point in Centerville, located approximately 347 North, 400 East, with directives 1 through 9 in the staff report for suggested reasons A through C.
I'll second.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? We've talked a lot about it, so I feel like we've covered it. All right, we'll start at that end with Commissioner Wright.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. You prepared to make another motion?
Sure.
I want to make one.
Oh, sorry.
I was waiting my turn. No, I'm just kidding.
Go ahead then.
I hereby make a motion for the planning commission to accept the conceptual subdivision plan for Canyon Point in Centerville, located at approximately 347 North, 400 East, with directives 1 and 2 in the staff report and suggested reasons A through C.
I will second Becky's motion.
Thank you. Okay, any other discussion on this motion? No? Start at this end then.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, the motion passes as well. Thank you very much. All right, thank you everyone for a good conversation. As usual, I feel like the comments and discussion from the public was very timely and pertinent and very beneficial, so.
And as an editorial, I love seeing faces again, not via
Yes.
Zoom. It's good to see all of your faces in person.
Yes, it is. Okay, let's move along then to the next item on our agenda. We have another administrative decision. This one has been scheduled for a public hearing as well. Similar thing, conceptual site plan and conceptual subdivision for the lane located approximately 644 West, 400 South. And we will turn this one over to, who am I turning this one over to?
This one's me.
Great, Mackenzie.
I feel like Corey has said most of the things I need to say about this one in the previous, so I'm not going to hash it out very much, but this is the Dave Bell property sandwiched between our frontage road, Commercial Very High, and the Porter Walton townhomes. It's been a problem spot of ground for a little bit of time. I'm pretty sure that we have a current code enforcement violation on it that will hopefully be resolved shortly. But so there are two items on this staff report similar to Corey's, the conceptual site plan and the conceptual subdivision. There are just a few things I wanted to highlight from the staff report. This is a different section of the city in the general plan, which the area west of 500 West to the frontage road could be appropriately developed in low or medium density, which this is. And then it also stipulates that planned unit developments are desirable and preferred for a buffer from frontage road. So this is also a planned unit development. Each of the proposed lots will be sold separately, but it's one continuous unit as far as the subdivision goes. Let's see. For additional development standards in RM and RH zones, as Corey noted earlier, with state legislation, we can no longer dictate exterior design for single-family dwellings. However, this area will need to be designed by a Utah licensed professional architect with their stamp on the architectural drawings. And then lastly, in that section of code, the landscaping and open space So section 1251 of the zoning code does not apply for single-family developments. So because there are only single-family dwellings in this development, all of those landscaping restrictions or requirements do not apply. So we don't regulate how many trees, how many shrubs, 40% common space, and even the screening of dumpsters. So, I mean, you can ask the applicant what they're going to do about that. I don't know what they're going to do about that. They have provided, let's see if I have the plat. There we go. The private drive doesn't have an egress. It's one in and out. It's not required to have an ingress and egress because there's fewer than 20 units. But the fire department has recommended that hammerhead turnaround for their apparatus to be able to get all the way into the development and back out. It's 27 feet wide. They have proposed sidewalks on both sides, as well as a no parking zone on the east side of the lane. And then, let's see. One thing to note for their off-street parking and loading, as you can see on the plan, the lots will share a common drive. So at least on the plat, there will need to be a plat note stipulating that it is a shared space between each of those adjoining lots. That doesn't have to happen at the conceptual, but that's just something to keep in mind. And then lastly, for the conceptual site plan, this also applies for the subdivision. As noted in the staff report, this is actually two separate parcels. One with an address, 644 West, and the rest does not have an address officially. Lisa brought to my attention this morning that we passed ordinance 2018-11. I also added this to this notice earlier today. So if you want to peruse it at more depth, you can. When the zoning was changed from agricultural low to residential medium, one of the stipulations, and I'll just quote from the ordinance, provided the unapproved division of the parcels shall be combined into a singular parcel with the Davis County Recorder's Office prior to approval of any future development plan. So it was a stipulation that those two parcels be combined. It will make sense that they will be combined for this development, but Lisa recommends that we add a directive to both motions. And my recommendation is that we write it specifically how it is in the ordinance, that the combined parcels 03001, 0179, and 03001-0178 prior to final site plan approval, because that aligns with the ordinance, because it says prior to approval of any future development plan. So that gives them some time. Lisa recommended we could do it concurrently with the plat. That is her recommendation, and you can debate how you want to word that. But just that that be included in both the conceptual subdivision so that we are in accordance with our previous ordinance. And then for the conceptual subdivision review, the only thing to note is that the engineer, city engineer, and our drainage and water supervisors have requested a little bit more information on their on-site, this one's detention. Last I spoke and last staff spoke with the applicant, they were attempting to get an easement to drain to the frontage road from the northwest part of their property. So we just need some verification on how that will work. And the engineer would just like a few more details. And the city street supervisor would like to note that streetlights will need to be every 500 feet and at the entrance of the subdivision. Other than that, I don't think there's anything hugely different from Corey's staff report on conceptual site plan and conceptual subdivision, but I'd like to answer any questions you have.
Perfect. Thank you, Mackenzie. Can I ask Lisa a question? So Lisa, just on this ordinance that we're talking about that Mackenzie highlighted, provided the blah, blah, blah shall be prior to approval of any future development plan. And I guess the interpretation there is final approval of the final site plan.
Well, when I saw the staff report and this parcel was still there, I thought, why is that still a parcel? And I thought, well, maybe we just didn't fix the map. But then I went to the ordinance with the rezone, and it had that condition. So I think usually we require someone to do away with those lines at the time of the rezone. You know, you have to fix the illegality, but I suspect we were trying to be flexible with, you know, because there's a house there. And so again, similar to some prior applications that we've seen, I think as long as you condition the approval on them fixing this, I'm flexible whether that's prior to final site plan approval or conditioned with final site plan approval. My comment was, though, that, you know, with both of these projects, they're a dual application. There's a final site plan and there's a final subdivision. Well, sometimes they could just do away with the subdivision and only be left. So my comment was either on both, make it conditioned prior to final plat recording or prior to, you know, a building permit or final site plan, whichever occurs first. That was my main concern, so that if they never go through with the subdivision, we still have that condition. And I think I would like to, you know, maybe we can hear from the applicant and decide whether they've already purchased the property, it's under contract. You know, if we can do away with that lot line right now and do it with final site plan, that's a great suggestion. I don't know if they have that flexibility, though.
Okay, we'll be sure to ask the applicant that after, in just a minute. Does anybody else have any questions for Mackenzie or any other?
I have a question, maybe this is for the applicant also. I see that it says existing building over the property line. Has the applicant discussed how they're going to address that, or?
They have not discussed that with staff.
Okay. Also in the, I guess it's the civil drawings from the applicant, I'm seeing on the last page, the common space looking like it's being covered over the driveway. Is that acceptable in our code, that they have the private drive counting as common space?
So, as addressed in, let's see if I have it quickly on hand. So we do not need to require common space in
Okay.
this development because they are only single-family dwellings.
Okay.
If they were duplexes, then we would be negotiating where the common space is and
Okay,
addressing the needs of whoever they hope to live there.
perfect, thank you.
Anybody else? No? All right, we will invite the applicant then to come forward and introduce yourself, discuss anything you'd like, but please discuss the timing and the plan for elimination of the lot lines and the existing building that's over the property line.
Yeah, my name is Zach Swenson. I work with CW Urban. We are a local development group. It took all of 1 minute to drive here, as we're just across the freeway there. So we are dedicated to Centerville. We have a few projects going on here, including our new office space. As well, we're dedicated to affordable housing, which there is a shortage of. So we're really excited about this project or product, and we think this project will be great for the city, and it provides that opportunity for the moderately priced home buyer. So we're excited about that. Regarding timing, obviously with this development, that property line will be eliminated at whatever point is necessary. It would make no sense to maintain that, nor would it be legal, so we intend to have that removed with the project as we proceed. I don't know what other comments can be made to
Chair
I guess
Daley.
keep you at ease there.
Yeah, go ahead.
It is- I think from a standpoint, I don't know if the commission thinks this, but the timing is you're a contract purchaser, so the issue is where does the control lie? Are you going to require it from the owner of property to do it prior to you moving forward, or do you plan on purchasing it and eliminating it? Maybe is the question.
Thanks, Corey, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great clarification. I think the intention would be to acquire the property and at that point have that changed or made, that change made.
When the housing is put in, do you guys intend to do the landscaping, or are you going to leave the landscaping completely up to the homeowner?
Because it's a single-family product, I think there's a lot of ability for the homeowners to decide what they want to do with their landscaping. I think there will be limited landscaping done by us, just to bring it up to quality or design standard. But I think that will be part of the homeowner's rights, I guess you could say.
How about the existing building in that northwest corner that's hanging over the property line?
Yeah, the existing building, we've had preliminary discussions with the owner of the building and have talked about whether, it's a shed, it's a really old shed, and so we've talked about potentially, if they do not want to keep it, doing the demolition for them, or coming up with a lot line resolution to keep them satisfied. And so we're willing to pursue whichever is necessary, whichever solution is necessary to keep all parties happy and content.
Oh, I didn't notice on the plans, how big are these homes going to be, and how many bedrooms, how many baths do you anticipate?
So there are 2 unit types as of right now, 2,600 square feet and 2,800 square feet. And I believe it's a 3-bedroom. I think there could be variances to that, but I think it's fair to say that they will mostly be 3 to 4 bedroom.
2-story, 1-story?
1-story.
With a basement?
With a basement, yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Any other questions?
All right, any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you, Chair Daly and the commissioners. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. All right, so this matter has been scheduled for a public hearing as well, and we will take this opportunity to open the public hearing. Invite anybody who would like to come forward to do so.
Do we allow people to participate via calling in when we're here in person? Have we considered making that a possibility?
We haven't done it so far.
Okay.
We can if that's.
No, I
the
was
route
just
you wanna
thinking
take.
through, like, if we're hybrid, does that allow people to participate?
We have talked about it, and on one of our upcoming, we may do it because we have some applicants from, well, actually, that one's the RDA, but they're from out of state, and so we will be doing a Zoom for that, but
Just maybe something to think about going forward. I mean, we all learned new stuff during the pandemic, and I don't know if we want to open that particular door, but if we had a protocol whereby people could call in and we could see if people are in Zoom or something, that might allow people who are not here in person or who might have mobility issues to participate. Just a thought.
I like that thought. I know that last week when we had the work session, I got caught not being able to come in person and wishing that I could have Zoomed in.
Well, we have the
you can
ability
always
to.
call in.
I can always
We still
call
do
in.
have that.
Okay.
You know, the Zoom does take a lot more staff preparation.
But usually, like, residents can't call in. Usually it's just the planning commissioners who can.
Oh,
So we would
yes.
have to figure out a way to do it so that
I would just-
residents could.
I would suggest that we as a planning commission think about whether, like, as one of our goals or whatever, consider that as just a possibility, and if it works logistically, how to make it work.
I think that's something that we can talk about in the future.
Okay. No more, I see no.
Back
people coming
on,
from
yeah, I
us-
was gonna say,
Coming forward.
back on task. I don't see anybody rushing to the microphone to speak to the public hearing, so we will go ahead and close the public hearing, having given them plenty of time to do so. Okay. No other questions for the applicant? Does anybody have any other comments, questions, thoughts, or concerns?
So the engineer has looked at this detention pond situation and approved that?
He's looked at it preliminarily, but would like more information. I think he just needs to meet with them specifically to go over
Yeah, they have to look at that easement, the size of the line, and see if it can handle the amount of water that's going to flow through there. So we're going to have that answer for final site plan, or they're not going to be able to drain it, so.
But typically, as you recall, we don't do engineering at the conceptual
Right.
level to save the applicant.
I just thought it was interesting that our last application had like the bubbler and had all that stuff sort of pre-figured out, and this is just more like a detention
More
pond.
conceptual.
Yeah,
And it's up to the applicant, because again, at conceptual engineered drawings.
they don't
are
have
not
to.
required.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So, but Corey, you made a comment before about the size of the project determines whether it's retention or detention.
Yeah, this is anything over, what's it,
1 acre.
1 acre needs to retain. There is a provision to waive that retention if the groundwater is difficult, or the percolation rates don't work, or the groundwater's too high. They're planning on basements into this project, so the engineer's just gonna review what he anticipates is there. I mean, of course, we're also in a dry year too. I don't know if that means anything anymore, but we're in a dry year, and if we had a wet year, what would happen to, the property? So I think they just want the soil study, some analysis to determine what's going on, and then what's the amount that needs to be moved, and is that able to retain and percolate, or do we use it as partial detention and move it out to the frontage road? Those are all what he's trying to assess.
But regardless, you feel comfortable, he feels comfortable with enough information right now and the size of, detention or retention space.
He feels comfortable with the layout in general,
Okay.
but the size of the detention will be based on those calculations, so there may be some shifting
Okay.
if need be.
Which, again, that's not required at conceptual, but that will be required before final.
Right.
Okay.
I intend to vote in favor of this proposal. I'd like to preface my comment by saying that I intend to vote in favor of this plan. And I have nothing against this plan. But I am going to now take the opportunity to editorialize, because to me, this reflects, I know that there are a lot of people who believe that single-family homes are the ultimate and best use of property, and that our city should only be promoting single-family homes. And to me, this is the perfect example of a piece of property that I think would benefit from us putting more multifamily housing on it, because we have no ability to mandate any type of trees or shrubs or green space. They can put these homes down, they can literally throw dead grass out on the front, have no landscaping whatsoever. Not that I'm saying this is gonna happen, but they could, and we would have no ability to do anything with it. This is a piece of property between residential medium, very dense residential medium on the east side, and commercial very high property on the west side. This seems like it is screaming out for me for some high residential, high, nice multifamily property that you could build and have really lovely green space and put in some playground equipment for kids and really utilize this property in a way that would make a lot more sense for our community. And instead, we're getting single-family homes that I think ultimately, I question whether this is the type of development that we should be encouraging as a community in all places and all things. I don't think that we should always be thinking that single-family homes should be elevated above all other types of housing. And so again, I say this without any negativity towards the development that's being put here, but this one strikes me as a little bit of a lost opportunity and maybe a cautionary tale about be careful what you wish for.
So maybe as a counterpoint to that, obviously the developer is paying attention to the market, and I'm guessing that they've determined that this is the best situation for them to be able to sell it. I'm guessing, that's a big guess, but.
No, I would never, I agree with you. I do not want to tell people what to do with their property, and if they think that they're going to be able to put these homes in and sell them, I am supportive of that. But this just strikes me as one of these areas where I think that conceptually, if you could talk to people and say, look, not all places, maybe we don't want to put single-family homes in all places, right? Like, let's talk about what this could have looked like differently had we put in some high-density housing and utilized more of the common space in a way that I think ultimately might have worked better
But
there.
is it, again, and not to be difficult, but to just kind of, play devil's advocate with you, is it possible that part of our tension or challenge with the housing market today is a general lack of single-family housing? There's nothing for people to move out of twin homes and townhomes into, right? And maybe this serves a need for that, to be able to allow people to do that. They don't want to have to worry about noise from the neighbor next door. They don't want to worry about shared walls and whatnot, so.
I love it when you play devil's advocate because I think that debate is good and I think that debate is healthy. And I think that there is definitely a time and a place for all types of housing. Again, this one to me, it's right in between a set of healthy townhomes and commercial high property. So anyway, I make that editorial comment for what it's worth because I'm hopeful that the homeowners that go in will put in lovely trees and shrubs and it will look fantastic.
Sure.
But we have no ability as the city to control that, and if it were something else, then we would, so.
No, it's a good discussion, and I think that's a fair, comment and whatever else. I can definitely appreciate that. I do think, though, even on a private development like this, if somebody lets their yard go to weeds and whatnot, isn't that still subject to enforcement?
Yeah, I'm thinking less of weeds than just somebody that throws down a bunch of sod, right? Like, it's fine, it's just not very.
So I appreciate your comments, Shaylin, and I initially, when I saw this project, I was thinking it was going to be multifamily because it's, surrounded in that same way. And then I remembered Shayla Park just to the south of this, which is also multifamily, but the look and feel of Shayla Park is quite different than Porter Walton. And there are some sort of like larger spaces of grass and different things. And then if you look at the actual gross density of this, it's 6 units per acre. Isn't that right? That's what I'm seeing on the staff report.
Yeah, that's the max
That's
now.
what I got.
That's the residential.
Oh, the proposal is 5.88, sorry. So, it is, even though it is single family, it's not like single family if you think of it that way. The applicant has told us the sizes of the homes are a little bit smaller than maybe trying to shove as big as possible house on a lot and have no yard. And I do think that there's space in the market for something that maybe doesn't look like the typical single family, but maybe isn't just a townhome. And I'm actually I was intrigued as I looked at some of the details of this. I was intrigued to think about they are detached, but yet the density is almost 6, and the size of the home is a little bit smaller. This to me really just speaks to what I was talking about with my comment at the very beginning of this meeting. We tried to get Porter Walton to be affordable or, moderate income housing, and those houses, those townhomes, were really expensive. I'm not saying these are going to be super cheap or anything. These will probably, everything is expensive now, but I do like this product because I think it has something that I haven't seen everywhere. It sort of blends or marries some of the best parts of different zones, I guess, it'll be interesting to see how it goes, and I'm really excited to see it.
In between this property and Canyon Point, we're adding 22 units.
What'd you say?
22, right?
Between this one and the
Between
previous
this one and the
application.
previous application, we're adding 22 new homes to our community, and I think that it's needed.
Yeah.
So, regardless, again, I have nothing against your property. I'm not commenting negatively on that at all. But it's exciting to see needed housing going into our community.
I think you're all right. You're all hitting the marks right. But I do agree with the issue when it comes to buffering and transition zones, it could be considered a missed opportunity. And don't think that CW and Land and myself didn't have that conversation.
Yeah.
I think there are going to be a lot of people really happy with these homes and really excited about the possibility of buying in our community.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree. Okay. Any other comments? All right.
Do you want me to make the motion?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. I hereby make a motion. I feel like I'm getting so much echo here. I'm sorry. I hereby make a motion for the Centerville Planning Commission to accept the conceptual site plan for the lane located at approximately 644 West, 400 South, with directives 1 through 3 in the staff report, adding a fourth directive that reads that the applicant must combine the two parcels prior to approval of any future development plan for suggested reasons A through B. Does that language work for you, Lisa? Do
I was
need to
gonna
add
say
any?
maybe,
Well, I think we have to decide, at this point, this is the future development
Yeah, yeah.
approval. So
All right.
my suggestion still is, given that they are under contract to purchase the property and likely that is subject to getting site plan approval, I just think it's difficult to say they have to combine those before site plan approval. So I,
Combine them prior to
if that's
when?
okay, I would still recommend that we just say that the applicant shall combine the two parcels prior to or concurrent with recording the final plat or prior to issuance of any development or building permit within the project, whichever occurs first.
I amend my motion to have that portion, what Lisa just said.
I watched Shaylin try and write that down, but
I just stopped.
forget about it.
So I actually made it more restrictive than my prior, because I think Mackenzie makes a good point, is they really shouldn't even be doing any kind of, I don't even want
Yeah.
them getting foundation or
Yeah.
utility work or anything. Let's not push this down the line anymore. Let them get final site plan approval, finish, purchase the property, and then at that point, they can combine, because they won't be able to move forward with
Yeah.
anything.
That is
And
my
I feel
motion.
comfortable with that.
Okay, so we're going to use
That is my motion, yes.
Lisa's language as item number 4.
and I will second that motion with those, that added.
Perfect. Any further discussion about our motion? No? All right, then we will start down on that end.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Great, thank you. We have another motion.
Oh, yes.
Oh, should we?
Do you want to do it, Becky? Oh,
Christina?
yes.
What is
Christine.
it?
It's on the bottom of page 6.
I just went down to the other one, sorry.
6 of 7.
Page 6 of 7.
It should be on your screen.
You don't
too.
have to do it.
You do it on your.
I don't want to pressure you.
This one right here? Okay. I hereby make a motion for the Planning Commission to accept the conceptual subdivision plan for the lane located at 644 West, 400 South with the following directives 1 through 4.
Plus Lisa's 5th.
Plus Lisa's
Plus
fifth.
Lisa's 5th. Is that all?
Yep, and then suggested reason.
Oh, and then suggested reasons for action A through C.
And just to clarify for the record, Lisa's fifth is identical to condition number 4 in the prior motion.
Yes.
Yeah, that.
I'll second that.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye, sorry.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, that motion passes as well. Thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing the single parcel coming back and for a final, so. Okay, I've gotten all stirred up here. Let's move on to our next item on the agenda.
Do we have our applicant?
Yeah, do we have an applicant here? Are we going to proceed with it, or do we?
He's not here. I think you can proceed, but this is a bunch of legalese.
It is very
Yeah.
legalese. Why don't we move on? Well, let's talk about it. We have an administrative decision, the Bradley Trump property, which we talked about at length at our last meeting. So I'll turn this one over to staff to tell us about what you've updated and negotiated.
Yeah, I was gonna say, while this is my project, Lisa wrote this memo, so she'll explain it to you.
I suspect you can guess that, but we have a very detailed planning commission.
It's a full page.
And my goal was to make sure that there were no loopholes. So this is what you get, is entire page. But let me just walk through this, and I did talk with Corey, and I think he had an opportunity to talk with the applicant as well. What I realized, I mean, obviously the buildings create an illegality. And so the planning commission cannot approve this without either those coming down or giving him some sort of exception that he has to comply with. But as we thought this through, staff realized that he actually has an entire year to record his plat. With our new amendment, it's not 6 months, it's now a year. So we talked to the applicant, and he said, yes, I am intending, sorry, I think I was going to have a coughing attack, so I had to have it. But anyway, that he is intending on applying for a building permit. And so I think that these timeframes work, is that he actually, if he's serious about that, he has an entire 12 months to file for that building permit. And that's what we're all hoping is going to happen. And if that happens, then these conditions, most of them will not have to be imposed. But we were trying to be very comprehensive, so what this says is, in order, the applicant has two options at the beginning. Either remove the structures before recording the plat, or file for a building permit within 12 months from that plat recording. So he actually has 2 years to apply for a building permit, okay? Given, you know, the economy, everything, I think that it's reasonable to give a little bit more time. And then I also thought, well, what if he gets a building permit and then he never builds the building? So then I put in, oh, and you have to build that building within 30 months. So again, giving him another year almost to actually complete the construction. And then I added in some other conditions that, okay, if you don't file for the building permit within 12 months, you have to tear the buildings down within 3 more months after that. And if you don't complete the construction within 30 months, you have to tear it down within another 3 months from that. So I think we have the deadline set. And then in addition, and again, hoping these don't have to be imposed if he gets the building permit, but if he doesn't get the building permit in the next 12 months and he wants to record the plat, we're suggesting, or I guess I should say my recommendation is that they add a plat note to the plat. So if anybody purchases this property, they know those buildings either have to come down or you have to get a building permit, you know, kind of explaining these conditions on the plat. Then he'll post a $10,000 bond. That may not be enough money for the city to tear the structures down, but it certainly provides an incentive for the property owner to do so. We've gone with the option of just saying, hey, here's a condition. There's no incentive for them to comply, and we have to pursue very costly enforcement. So I do recommend the bond with some sort of agreement, and then also having the property owner allow us to put something on the title, because as we know, people don't always read the plat. So if someone else purchases this property, there will be a notice of illegality that has to be fixed. And so hopefully we've covered all the bases, and I'm really disappointed that Commissioner Kerr's not here, because I'm sure he would find something. I don't know, did he phone in any comments, or?
No.
Okay, well, hopefully we've covered it. I understand it is a very lengthy condition, but maybe we can use this as a template, because really our ordinances say you have to tear it down. So I feel like we're being flexible. It sounds like we have a lot of conditions, but we are being flexible to allow them additional time to tear those down.
Yeah.
Thank you for this.
No, I agree. I like exactly what you said there. Feels like we're being flexible. We're not gonna be the big mean city that's gonna, you know, make you tear down a building that you wanna use anyway.
That you intend, yeah, you know, and if he pursues what he's saying and he does get a building permit in the next 12 months, he doesn't even have to put this on the plat. He doesn't have to post a bond, you know, and he doesn't have to put anything on the title. So hopefully he can get that accomplished. But if he can't, then this is in place.
Yeah. No, I like that. That's good. So a couple quick questions for you then. So he has 12 months to record the plat. 12 months after that to apply for a building permit. And then, so then I'm looking at the 30 months. Does the 30 months, is a building permit good for 18 months? Is that, where does the 30 months come from? Sorry.
Well, I was going to give him 3 years to build, because well, you have to get your building, you know, the first year is getting the building permit. And I, you know, if anybody's constructed a home, you don't always get the home done in 1 year. And so that was my concern, and I thought, well, should I give them 2 years to complete the home? So anyway, but let me think about this, because I was saying everything from final plat recording. So why did I put plat approval? I think B is 30 months from recording.
Well, Lisa, I think we had the discussion of typically our ordinances are start construction within 1 year and substantially complete within 2 years. And if they have 1 year to record the plat, then it's 3 years from
So they already have it from,
approval.
So 30 months from approval is still going to work.
yeah, but all the other timeframes are from plat recording, so
Well,
D
in
is
D,
plat approval as
in
well.
D, you still have 30
Oh.
months for final plat approval as well.
oh, okay, then yeah, then maybe that was.
Okay.
I feel good about it.
Yeah, I like it's a lengthy way to be flexible, but I like the flexibility of it.
I like the many, like, avenues that, you know, you're trying to foresee and give a lot of flexibility, for not just one way of doing it, but
If there's
several
some-
ways.
And Corey, you have had a chance to talk to the applicant about this, and
Yeah, we talked in a DRC meeting with him, and I think he understands this to some degree, but I would not say it's 100% within the timeline of his understanding, because he's also focused on a construction loan and funding and bonding for improvements. So I think he generally intends this. He said he intends to get building as soon as possible. We talked about how we could be flexible on the issuance of the building permit versus his approval. And we also talked about how the bond versus his construction loan, he has to do some checks with his construction loan process to make sure he can do it. So I think he's generally on board with this, but I would say that to be fair to his side, his construction loan timing and the timing of this is probably, I think he's focusing on, hopefully I can get this done and not even have to do
not even worry about
the rest of the other. But whether that happens, I think he hasn't focused past the ultimate consequence.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to insult if anybody listens to the recording. It's just, he's got a lot on his plate to try to make this all happen.
I didn't see that there was an action on this. Do you need something from us as a planning commission?
Yeah, we need
approve this,
to,
or-
so this is going to be,
No, those were the
what's the
earlier.
previous one? What is this?
I didn't
Was
see any.
tabled from the last time, so I included the staff report
Ah.
from last time, so just add this
Vision six.
condition. Can't pull it up. 'cause it
This
says
is
I'm
from the
not on
June
internet.
23rd, the June 23rd. Oh, I see. Okay, I've got the motion covered.
Got it,
Unless
yeah.
there's further discussion.
No, I like this. I think it's a great approach to be flexible, but still cover our bases and not say that we've been delinquent in making sure that we're, covering, not being illegal. The illegalities.
I still think B and D reference should be from final plat recording, because that was my intent. If you leave it at, I know in D it also says, in the event the residential dwelling is not completed within the required 30 months from final plat approval, then they have to take it down within 33 months from the date of final plat recording, and my intent was, that was supposed to just be 3 months apart. But that would be a significant amount of time, because, well, it would be 15 months, because you've got 12 months to record. So I think both B and D should be recording.
Within 30 months from the date of the final
Yes, so
plat
they're all
recording.
recording, so that, I know it was awkward, but I didn't want to say 3 months from, so I just, if you could change those from approval to.
I got it.
Yeah, you want to make a motion?
Yes.
Great.
I hereby make a motion for the planning commission to approve the small subdivision waiver, subject to conditions 1 through 5 in the staff report dated June 23rd of 2021, with an additional condition 6 as set forth in the staff backup report from July 14th of 2021, with 2 small revisions. in 6B and 6D, it will read within 30 months from the date of final plat recording instead of final plat approval, for suggested reasons A through C in the June 23rd, 2021 staff report. Yeah.
I'll second.
Christina. Perfect. We have an excellent motion and a second. Any further discussion on this one? Can't remember which way we went, Doug.
Doesn't matter.
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Thank you. This motion passes as well. Okay. Moving along. We have, believe it or not, we've made it to the Community Development Director's report and City Council report. Corey?
Thank you, Chair Daly. Commission, I'm just showing you on your July 28th agenda, we have scheduled a notice for the internal ADUs. Lisa and I still are getting together to talk about the owner occupancy requirement, but we should be prepared for you. And then you probably don't necessarily know about this one. The mayor had some citizens approach him at the council meeting previously, discussed it at a council meeting, corner lots for fencing. They would like to change the fencing requirements to allow the side yard along the street to have a higher fence. And so we've been directed to notice that, and I wasn't saying it's easy, it was just the right timing to put this in, and because it wasn't on your original goal list. And it was just the right timing for me logistically to respond to their need and take it to the Planning Commission. Which leads me to the place that I don't want to give you too much detail about, because it shows you what happens to a 56-year-old person. But I missed your goal planning session. I booked myself when I shouldn't have booked myself, and I got focused on handling the other elements. We had some out-of-town visitors, and I missed your meeting. The nice part about it is Mackenzie, tongue-in-cheek, she didn't really say this, but I'm throwing her under the bus, said, "It was really nice not to have you, Corey, there, because then we had a good discussion."
Not what I said.
I have a feeling that's not what Mackenzie said.
Mackenzie's saying something like that, actually.
So, but I did get reports back from it, and
Kevin did a great job.
yeah.
I would love to hear a little report because I missed it as well, so.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to be there either.
Yeah, I mean, we did have a good discussion. I don't know, you want to give us a report, or? Okay.
Put her on the spot.
You did a good job, Dad.
We essentially went through the memo that had been provided before that work session, which outlined those major goals that we had identified, well, the goals that we identified, the big ones, and the smaller ones and whatnot. And from the city council's perspective, they were supportive of our goals as we had previously discussed and prioritized them as well. They asked how they could help us in those goals and to fulfill those. And really where the discussion went on that as far as where they can help us was give us enough direction on the big items that we don't feel like we're wasting our time, right? So the general plan revision especially is one of the one that we spent a lot of time talking about for that. And then when we get back to Main Street, talking about Main Street, make sure that, let's check in, have some milestones. Milestones were the words that we talked about, right? But that was the phrase we used. Have some milestones that we can check in with the city council to make sure that we are heading in the direction that they can support so that we don't end up wasting our time. The littler ones, I think we can handle the littler ones. That's not that big of a deal, whatnot. But in a nutshell, that's kind of what we talked about.
Great.
Anything else I missed?
And I had a couple conversations with a couple council members afterwards, and they felt very positive about it. The discussion that I got from the council members was a little bit of, they do want to, in theory, respect your position as citizen planners and allow you some freedom to have that input.
Yeah.
And so they did shy away saying, how far do we go? But I do think the tension that we've experienced in the past came to light. Let's not go somewhere down a road that we're not even envisioning as a possibility. So they talked about the milestones, checking in, little bit of the general plan and milestones and reports back on how we're, how good are we getting, the vision, how are we accomplishing it, are we missing the direction, so.
And I think there will be minutes for us to approve for that eventually, right?
I think because we didn't have a quorum, it was technically just a city council meeting.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, then the city
They-
council can,
yeah, so they will be approving the minutes from that, which I think will happen, what is today, the 14th? I think it will be happening next week.
okay. Sounds good, thanks. Okay, any other questions for Corey, or?
No true confessional requests, I hope. No, I just had a family come from Georgia. I'm involved in a baseball program and in family hosting, and I got caught up on dates and times, and I just played a 56-year-old person that lost his mind.
Well, I'm just glad it wasn't something tragic, so.
I am too, but then when it hit me that I missed it, I felt like getting run over a bus would have been a better alternative.
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
At least mentally.
The bus that Mackenzie's driving. All right, let's move on to the last item on our agenda. We've got some minutes to review. We will go through these quickly, page by page. Anybody have any recommended changes on page 1? Page 2? Page 3? Page 4? And this is just a, I don't know, if there's any way we can get page 5 on the bottom of page 4, I would love that, just to squeeze it all up. But, well, that's fine.
I move that we approve the minutes
As
as
unamended
unamended.
of June 23rd,
Yeah,
2021.
technically, yes.
I'll second that.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, we are adjourned.